Week 16 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I look to drop this week. The first one, the Green Bay Packers. So the Packers, I know the schedule was favorable to them in Week 15 with the Los Angeles Rams coming to town. But now Week 16, they're going to be a droppable unit at a high-powered Miami Dolphin offense. So the last few games here for this Packer defense, Week 12 at Philadelphia, 40 points allowed, 2 sacks, a fumble recovery. Week 13 at the Bears, 19 points allowed, 2 windows, a fumble recovery, a block kick. And Week 15 versus the Los Angeles Rams in that one, 3 sacks in that ball game and 9 points allowed. So right here was a 1 week use only for this Packer defense. And now that with the tough matchup in Miami in Week 17 versus the Minnesota Vikings, they're not really a defense I recommend to use for the remainder of the season. Even though I know they were a mediocre unit this season here, they're just not a team that obviously won a lot of ball games and not a team that put up a lot of fantasy points at the defensive position. So right now, I have them as a drop this week. The second defense DST unit I would drop is the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks here, they were a 1 week use only in Week 14 versus the Panthers. And then versus San Francisco, I don't know why a lot of fantasy owners still held on to them, but right now still own them 40% of fantasy leagues. And now with Kansas City coming up, there's no way you're going to use the Seahawk defense. So Week 13 at the Rams, 23 points allowed, 4 sacks, 2 windows. Week 14 versus the Panthers, 30 points allowed, 2 sacks in that one. And Week 15 versus the 49ers, 21 points allowed and a sack. So right here, they're not going to get the job done in Kansas City. This offense here losing Tyler Lockett's definitely a big miss here, where the more drives, they might come off the field quicker, and that defense could be more tiring. But right now, with the tough matchup coming up at Kansas City and not really scoring fantasy points over the last few weeks here, their defense I would drop this week in the third and final defense DST unit. I look to drops the Washington Commanders. So the Commanders, I thought they would have a great game versus the New York Giants, but obviously that didn't happen with only 1 fantasy point in that one with 14 points allowed. So right here, the Commanders, tough matchup at the 49ers in Week 16, but they were playing good defense. I thought Chase Young would return, but still, that ACL injury definitely was worse than many people expected. He's missed the whole season, is Chase Young. But anyway, the last few games here for Washington, Week 12 versus Atlanta, 13 points allowed, sack and an into. Week 13 at the Giants, 20 points allowed in that one, 4 sacks, a fumble recovery. And Week 15 versus the Giants, 14 points allowed. So right here, they're holding teams down into mid-teens, low 20s. But they're not really getting a lot of sacks. They're not turning the ball over, is this Washington defense. And right now, they're a better real-life defense than a fantasy defense. And now, with San Francisco coming up, they're droppable as well. So that's a few defense DST units I look to drop here for Week 16 of the fantasy football season.